Hey everyone, welcome back to another series of the ranking each hero in its own respective faction. And in today's video we're going to go over the Valiantors. So Valiantors, as you may notice, do not have a second team in my opinion. They do, but there's no heroes that currently fit this format unlike Mystifiers did. So the best in synergy is basically Pandora, and I'm not sure if I really need to explain this, but Pandora pretty much excels in every single game mode. She's been slightly lackluster in the PvP recently, but other than that, in PvE, she's the best single target DPS hero in the game. She scales the most, she's the best hero bar none, and it will continue being like that for a while, I'm pretty sure. The next best hero is Odin. Odin is not as amazing in PvE in terms of DPS, but she provides a unique skill that no hero does, and that's pretty much negating the whole Holy Shield as its own existence. So basically anything that provides Holy Shield or Holy Armor, Odin will disable it before anything in the round happens. So basically disabling the Holy Shields in the round 0, which is pretty crucial when it comes to Mystifiers, as I have said in the previous Mystifiers video. She's pretty great pair with them because Mystifiers damage does happen in round 0, but Odin is coded to go before that, which is honestly one of the most amazing codings they have done in a while. So Odin, one of the better PvP heroes. Odin shares the same skill as Pandora when it comes to PvP, which is the snowball on kill. So basically anytime a kill happens, they will use their ultimates again on the same target. I'm not sure where that's written exactly. So yeah, when allies kill an enemy, they will cast the skill again on the enemy, but this is worded wrongly. It's actually Pandora that does the ultimate. And pretty much same is said for the Odin, so whenever ally does the kill, they will basically cast the skill again. So they share the same trait, but even if you pair them together, the ally, or rather, in the case of Pandora, Pandora will use the ultimate. In the case of ally, it stacks, basically, is what I'm trying to say. They do stack, you can use them both in the same team. However, I do not personally like that. I do think that Odin is more made for the protectors. So in Valiantors you have 4 protectors, or even 5 if you want to use the Fate hero. But currently these 4 protectors do fit really nicely together, and I do think that the only Valiantors that fit together currently are Pandora and Vittoria, and the rest of the synergy you pretty much most of the time fill with the honorable mentions, which is the Glorians, because you want the Phantom Illusion and the protection from the Wu Zetian, as well as the speed, because Pandora does her ultimate as soon as action happens, and nobody else is best for the fast action, apart from Behemoth obviously, then Wu Zetian, because she is the fastest hero in the game without Behemoth. Then you pretty much want Yorm, because Yorm's skill multiplier increases the Pandora's everything. So this multiplier pretty much increases every ultimate damage Pandora does, and Yorm is the best buffer for Pandora ever made. She also brings survival, she also brings Monarch, and she also brings her own additional damage and ultimate casts. And the third hero, mostly you can use Audrey, but you can also use Shang, but Shang doesn't really pair with Wu Zetian. So I tend to use Audrey in most cases, but I do believe that the best hero going forward is going to be Marina. And why? Because Marina makes Pandora do splash damage with her pretty much passive. So Pandora is a single target, best single target damage dealing hero in the game. You mix that with splash damage from the Sourceborn Marina and she becomes AoE. And AoE Pandora is quite scary thing to look at, so I do think that this is going to be the best thing moving forward. It will also be 4 Glorians and Phantom Illusion immunity. So 4 Glorians will basically provide CC immunity for 4 rounds, or rather 4 actions. If you want to play Sourceborn Marina, I would play Audrey very likely in this slot and keep it like that. You can also play Twins if your Audrey is pretty much busy in other teams. You can play Twins or Talonis, it's also great. But yeah, as of right now, I do think that these are the only 2 Valiantors that go together. You can use Macaria, although this is more for the undeveloped accounts that currently don't have much of the options to use the mentioned heroes. And you can also use Elmer. Elmer is great, although people in the late game tend to use Elmer in Phantoms more than the Valiantors. And you can also use Ra. Ra is pretty amazing hero, but not really well fit for Valiantors, unfortunately. Her sustain, or rather her protection, is pretty squishy and she dies real fast. You can also use Alice in this position. Alice brings great shields to the team, although she's an EV hero. so use with caution. That's pretty much it for the Valiantors. And the second Valiantors teams, as I mentioned, is the Protectors Valiantors. This team is amazing because Everhand Diana works with Protectors amazingly, because anytime she reflects back, she will use her ultimate damage instead of basic skill, or rather she will use the both. Hades also is a really strong hero with his basic attacks, and Odin here to remove enemy holy shields is amazing because Protectors will repose back the attacks and have easier time taking down the enemies. The fifth hero is pretty much any hero from this side of the pool. So as you can see, you have few Protectors down the line, and you can also use Mulan for the additional follow-ups and for the burn damage on these heroes. Although burn on the single target hero like Diana isn't all that well, so you would pretty much replace her with Liandra in terms of positioning. Although Diana really likes position 3 because of the increased accuracy in search position, because after all she's a single target damage, so missing means missing her only actual skill damage. So apart from Mulan, you can pretty much use any real other protector in this team. You can use Lancelot for the Phantom Illusion, so Hades will eat, Lancelot will steal, that's 3 enemies left. You can use Gaia for the speed benefit and damage increase and damage reduction. You can use Wukong to further enhance the snowball, but you do prefer to have a Celestial as a filler unit, so pretty much someone that's a Celestial. So even someone like Amaterasu, although she's been mostly used in the Ethereals right now, so she's not really worthy of picking up here. I tend to use Victoria in the Protectors because I do feel like her basic attacks fits the Protectors the most, as well as her defense scaling from the passive that pretty much scales into attack. So with Protectors, that's really nice passive. So her basic attack is really strong when paired with Protectors, and I do think she fits this team the most. Other than that, you can pretty much use anyone really, but as I said, you really want to use 2 Celestials in ideal case scenario. Even someone like Karnak would do, especially with his legendary runes. So that's really it for the top 6 Valiantors in this synergy. As I said, Elmer, you'd end up using Elmer in the Phantoms lineup. So pretty much someone like Phantom Elmer, so and some Dooms around him very likely, or even the most famous thing used right now is like this something built around, I believe, this. It's really strong because you're relying on a lot of ultimates from Narissa to proc Halloween Sanctuary, and you have Dahlia and Cleopatra swapping for the massive attack increases in the backline to your DPS heroes like Elmer and Narissa. Although that's pretty much it, only where you will see Elmer used. You can also use the normal Dooms with Elmer, so that's his most famous team pretty much build. And yeah, he's not really used in Valiantors, but he can for sure be used in the Valiantors. Just because he isn't doesn't mean he can't be. So yeah, that's really it for the top 6 heroes in the Valiantors. These are the best heroes Valiantors have. And then we move on to the fillers. As I said, you can use Ra in a lot of teams, but she's you shouldn't expect her to perform amazingly. You can use her, but you shouldn't rely on her to be someone like a carry. Macaria is pretty decent if you don't have heroes, so she will basically fill the synergy that you need. Alice is also pretty decent, especially in the shield foggy, so you can use Alice in there. Atropus you shouldn't be using in PvP, she's not really great. Marlena is amazing as long as you have her legendary runes, but you would also end up using her in Phantoms with someone like Elmer in here. Issue is Marlena doesn't really slot a lot of teams these days because there's a lot of better heroes, and the more better heroes are kept getting released. Nyx is a hero that is primarily used in tournament, and that's pretty iffy, so you don't really use Nyx anywhere nowadays. She's pretty mid in terms of power. And yeah, she's very slow as well. She's no longer in the meta. Themis is absolutely useless, but perhaps you could slot her in for the synergy filler if you're someone who doesn't have a lot of units to play around with. Elune is currently only used in Tombs pretty much, and that's if you only need to fill in the synergy. Christine unfortunately still hasn't found her team, although I do believe she has great potential to someday resurface in the meta, but unfortunately she hasn't found her team. And then lastly we have Ashlyn, which is one of the worst heroes in the game by far, and you will not end up using her anywhere. And then when it comes to Fate heroes, as I said, I do believe that Victoria is the best choice because she fits the Valiantors and Protectors the most. although she does not deal the physical damage, she does magic damage. Her kit just fits the Valiantors protectors the most. You would end up using Hela in something like Monarchs. Hela really likes long fights and long sustain, so she can scale up and stun as many enemies as possible. And Cleopatra as a last resource, but not really ideal in those teams unless you want to use her in Phantoms, as I mentioned. And then for the honorable mentions, you will pretty much always play Valiantors with one of these units, maybe even a lot of those units, so you can do something like this. If you're not playing Mystifiers, you can use Gaia and Ascended Bastet for the betterment of protectors in Valiantors, and end up having 3 Mystifiers, 4 Valiantors, and a pretty well-balanced synergies. Insane sustain from the Gaia, as well as better sustain from the Bastet. So overall, that's pretty much it when it comes to Valiantors. So those are pretty much the only heroes you will use. And those were the 2 team variations that I would personally always use. I wouldn't use Pandora without Vittoria unless you're using Vittoria in Avengers with Isis, which is an annoying combo, but it works. And Pandora mostly is nowadays hard to fit in Foggy unless you are playing her with Yorm and a lot of other great heroes. She is not great on her own, unlike the Protector Walls, which are pretty much the mono synergy. I consider them pretty much to be mono synergy nowadays, because they're quite simple to build and they do work. When it comes to relics, you would want to use something like Banner or something that brings sustain to this team, because protectors are all around taking hits and then reposing them back. So getting holy shields will make your team survive and also take hits to have more chance to hit them back. And then something that will basically increase your damage, so you can even use Kusanagi or even Excalibur, it doesn't really matter, but something that will basically increase your damage. Or if you're struggling with CC, you can also use Scissors to remove the CC. As for the team with Pandora, Pandora usually really likes Sarcophagus, because Sarcophagus increases the damage on ultimate casts, and this pretty much is perfect for her, as well as Arcane Doorbella, so it all depends if you're using this with Arcane Doorbella or not. And then you can also use Kusanagi, which is Pandora's best friend, and it also pairs well with Sarcophagus because they both have a strong freeze effect, which basically stacks on its own. And then for the third relic, you can use pretty much anything, although probably the most flexible one would be Knight's Edge for the leech rate, or you can also use this relic, which also has a freezing point, which pairs well with these 2 relics, not by synergy, but by the effect. And yeah, that's really it for today's video. I also forgot to mention, but you can also use Mirror in this team, because Mirror does revive a lot of heroes, so Mirror can be in slot 3 as a backup relic that basically will revive your protectors to have more chance of reposing back the attacks. And yeah, that's really it for today's video. So those were the Valiantors, and those were the 2 teams that you can pretty much play around with. Apart from that, the Valiantors are mostly fillers. Also, the newest Valiantors team is pretty much just 7 Valiantors, so you can also play the 7 Valiantors because they're really strong. So you would end up playing something like this pretty much. And this team is amazing in the non-seasonal content. It's really hard to beat and it's really strong, because Valiantors do scale like crazy. So whenever an ally takes action, increase the max HP and defense by 50%. This is same type of scaling that Odin has on her Oath Force, I believe. Yeah, this is insane tier of scaling, but it does require surviving in the early game to scale up like crazy, and it actually works. In seasonal it's a bit weaker, I noticed, but in non-seasonal it's absolutely strong, such as Arena or Yggdrasil. But it also does take out a lot of resources, like your ex-Fate hero and like a lot of protectors and even Pandora. Although Pandora is a filler in this team, you can pretty much use really anyone, it doesn't matter. You can even use Vittoria for the bind effect, but Pandora scales nicely with the protectors as well. So yeah, this is the 3rd team or 4th team, however you want to take it, but it's strong, but it also does take a lot of resources to build. So yeah, that's really it for today's video. Those were the Valiantors ranked. So Pandora is the best hero in the faction, followed by Odin and Hades. And the minimal star level for all of these to be used in PvP, I would say 7 to 8 stars for Pandora, 8 stars for Odin, 7 stars for Hades but with legendary runes, 8 stars for Vittoria with legendary runes, 7 or 8 stars if playing in Phantoms for Elmer, and 8 stars for Leandra if playing in Protectors. Elmer does benefit from legendary runes, but it's not mandatory. Vittoria does need them more, and Hades does need them a lot more as well. As for these heroes, they don't really need any runes, they are pretty just fillers, and these heroes don't belong in this synergy, so I'm not going to talk about them. But yeah, those were the minimal star levels needed for each of these heroes in the top. And that's it, see you guys in the next one.